Hey there friends, if you have access to a tinfoil hat of your own, you might want to put it on for this video. First guys, go check out my friends Mission First Tactical. That's Mission First Tactical. These guys have some incredible stuff. Personally, my favorite is their new Acro CCW bags. These bags are freaking awesome. They have a very subtle look to them. They don't have an overly tactical appeal to them. So even if you are carrying, it's not going to make you stand out, if you know what I mean. They also have their brand new translucent EXD magazines. These things are unbelievable. A little bit more detail on those in a future video you'll have coming up from me. And also backup iron sights. These are some legitimate backup iron sights. These are metal, not those cheap plastic ones that you see from some of the guys out there. And then they have tons of other things like gun parts and holsters. Check them out. MissionFirstTactical.com. Again, MissionFirstTactical.com. Use my discount code FTATF. Again, my world famous discount code of FTATF will get you money off at the time of checkout. You know, friends, I do my best to not pass news on. I do my best to take things that are happening, try to break them down a little bit, simplify them some, and in many cases it's simplifying it for me, not for you guys, and I just happen to pass on what I dumbed down for myself. This story that I'm about to share with you is going to really take a deep dive into a technological area that maybe a lot of people aren't interested in, but I think we ought to start being more aware of what's happening so we recognize it when we see little things pop up that don't quite make sense to us. According to a very recent Forbes article where they did a lot of research to get some FOIA requests and things of that nature, the feds ordered Google to unmask certain YouTube users. Critics say it's terrifying. If you look at the subtopic down below, in 2 court orders, the federal government told Google to turn over information on anyone who viewed multiple YouTube videos and live streams. Privacy experts say the orders are unconstitutional. In a just unsealed case from Kentucky reviewed by Forbes, undercover cops sought to identify the individual behind the online moniker Elon Musk WHM, who they suspect of buying Bitcoin for cash, which is essentially running a money laundering scheme because the federal government can't get a handle on it and they can't get their cut. So now it's considered money laundering. So in conversations with the user in early January, undercover agents sent links of a very specific YouTube tutorial for mapping via drones and augmented reality software, then asked Google for information on who had viewed the videos, which collectively have been watched over 30,000 times. Now, I want to explain the situation as clearly as I can. The feds took a link of an existing video, and I'll get more into the video and the maker of the video here in a second. They took a link for this video and they sent it to the person they suspected of money laundering, right? They did this because they didn't know who that person was. They only had a Google moniker or avatar or whatever, you know, their name that they use on Google/YouTube area. You guys obviously know YouTube is owned by Google, so it's essentially the same. So they could not find any information on this person, and this was their way by sending this video out to this person, and we don't know how they sent it out. There's a lot of speculation in this Forbes article and other articles that I've read that it could be any number of things. It could have been direct emails. It could have been suggested videos. You know how when you're watching a video on, say, I don't know, an M1 Garand, you have suggested videos in the margin for additional videos on M1 Garands. If you're talking about policy, like what we're talking about in most cases, you'll see suggested videos, and that's usually based on titles, tags, hashtags, things of that nature. So again, this could very easily have just been a suggested video that got boosted with an algorithm that made it visible to this user who they were trying to get the information from. What they essentially did after that, after X amount of people watched the video, they went to Google and said, we want all of the information of who watched this one specific video between January 1st and January 8th. And that was the specific date time that they assumed that person had possibly watched it. By doing that, they threw essentially what could be 30,000 people, because that's how many people have watched this video to now, into one big giant net as potential suspects. Think about this. No probable cause for the other 29,000. And I'm not saying they had it for the one guy, but they think they did. But the other 29,999 people in that warrant would have all been suspects in a crime for no particular reason. No warrant, no kind of probable cause, no reason to believe they took part in it. So all of these same information for 30,000 people would have gone to the feds in this particular case. The feds in this case ordered that there is reason to believe that these records would be relevant and material to an ongoing criminal investigation, including by providing identification information about the perpetrators. Again, 30,000 potential perpetrators. Now, according to Forbes, the court granted the order and Google was told to keep the request secret until it was unsealed earlier a couple of weeks ago when Forbes obtained it. Court records do not show whether or not Google provided the data in this particular case. Now, Google responded saying, with all law enforcement demands, we have rigorous processes designed to protect the privacy and constitutional rights of our users while supporting the important work of law enforcement. I find it wildly rich that Google, in an instance where they want to protect constitutional rights, are actually quoting or at least mentioning, referencing the Constitution. But when it comes to First Amendment rights and Second Amendment rights on their own platform, they don't want to hear about that old pesky Constitution. Google spokesman Matt Bryant said, we examine each demand for legal validity consistent with developing case law, and we routinely push back against overbroad or otherwise inappropriate demands for user data, including objecting to some demands entirely. Now, in this particular case, the Justice Department has not responded to Forbes to let them know any kind of comment on this particular issue at this time. Privacy experts said the orders were unconstitutional because they threatened to undo protections in the First and Fourth Amendments covering free speech and freedom from unreasonable searches. This is the latest chapter in a disturbing trend where we see government agencies increasingly transforming search warrants into digital dragnets. It's unconstitutional, it's terrifying, and it's happening every single day, said Albert Fox Kahn, executive director of the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project. He said the orders were just as chilling as geofence warrants, which we'll get into here in a second, where Google has been ordered to provide data on all users in the vicinity of a crime. Now, what is a geofence? Real quickly, geofence warrants are a type of reverse warrant where the government seeks to know who was within a, quote, geofence, a defined physical area during a specific period of time. These are a type of reverse warrants used to identify suspects when none are known without the data gathered by the warrant. What they mean by that is reverse warrant is that in many cases you have a suspect, right? You know who that person is. Then you go to the cell phone provider, whomever else, and you ask for their location information from their particular phone, and it will or won't place them at a particular area. Again, you're talking about one person. You're requesting info on one person, one specific person. You know their phone, you ping it, and you're getting one collection of data for one person. This reverse type warrant is when you don't have a suspect or a specific suspect, or you don't really know who they are, but you think they might be within this area. Like if a crime happened in a city block, you could block that off at the particular time that particular crime happened, get a reverse geofence type warrant, and pull every single person who was at that location at that time during the crime. Then you go one by one by one by one, either questioning or checking out every single person, but you've already collected all of their relevant data in addition to their location data. Now, I took the liberty of going on YouTube and hunting down this particular video, and I do believe I've found the one. It had come out, obviously, prior to or just prior to January of 23. So at least a year and a half to 2 years old, right? And the Forbes article said that it had 30,000 views. This is the only video that I could find when I searched specifically for the information Forbes said this video was about. This is the only video I could find with only in that neighborhood of 30,000 views. So I have to assume this is possibly it. I went through and looked at the video. Nothing really compelling about the video. It's not some kind of sinister video. It's just a simple video on drone mapping. So I went and looked at the creator of the video, Capturing Reality. You know, sometimes these feds will create not fake accounts, but their own accounts that are pretty much honeypot type accounts. This one did not look terribly suspicious. I went and looked at all of their relevant social media outlets and things like that, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, all of those, and did not see anything that really jumped out at me that screamed Fed boy, except look at the very, very bottom where it says Slovakia. This is not a American account. This is one overseas in the Europe area, and very suspicious that it's in Slovakia. We know all the turmoil and crazy stuff going on right now in that neighborhood, if you will. So that's the only thing that kind of drew a red flag up to me. Now, that's not to say that, again, I don't want to cast any aspersions that these guys are part of the feds trying to entrap people in the United States. I'm not saying they're not either. They could be. What I'm saying is they could take one of my videos and share it and simply pull that data for everybody on that one video. They could request that from Google as well. So it doesn't mean that just because this video link was shared that these guys are in on it, but I don't count anybody out at this point. Now, I went on to look at Google's privacy terms, how Google handles government requests for user information. And guys, I'm getting to a point on all of this, so please bear with me. Government agencies from around the world ask Google to disclose user information. We carefully review each request to make sure it satisfies applicable laws. If a request asks for too much information, we try to narrow it, and in some cases, we object to producing any information at all. We share the number and types of requests we receive in our transparency report. And they do. It's a pretty interesting report. I'll get to that in a second. They talk about requests from U.S. government agencies in civil, administrative, and criminal cases. The Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution and the Electronic Communications Privacy Act restrict the government's ability to force a provider to disclose user information. U.S. authorities must at least do the following. And here's your out. So they're saying that they can't request this information unless they do this. And they're doing this. In all cases, issue a subpoena to compel disclosure of basic subscriber registration information and certain IP addresses. In criminal cases, get a court order to compel disclosure, and then they go on to kind of explain that a little bit, but go down to the bottom of this particular page. Requests from U.S. government agencies in cases that involve national security. Here you go. In investigations related to national security, the government may use a national security letter or one of the authorities granted under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA. So this is where they're getting their, I guess, approval from. You know, they just passed this new FISA implementation or re-implementation of the FISA laws, and it's removing any real need for a warrant at this point. But if you look here, they really didn't need one before anyway. An NSL doesn't require judicial authorization, and it can only be used to compel us to provide limited subscriber information. That's on that particular one. FISA orders and authorizations can be used to compel electronic surveillance and the disclosure of stored data, including content from services like Gmail, Drive, and Photos. So they're going to get their information anyway. They don't need a warrant and didn't need a warrant before. If I go over here and look at the United States National Security Request for User Information, this again is all from Google's transparency reports. Again, these are FISA requests, but for non-content. A non-content FISA request is the from and the to fields in email headers. In other words, not the body of the email, only the from and the to, so they can see two people who are talking to one another and confirm if somebody, supposedly a terrorist from outside the border, is talking to somebody within the United States. That's where they get that, that's where that to and that from information is useful to them, supposedly. Now what I did is I took the liberty down here of showing you in red. That was the Trump administration, and note the numbers there, and look at the Biden administration above that in blue. You'll notice a pretty good spike, especially during that very first time frame, meaning January 6th. They went from averaging about 22,000 of these requests for the non-content to 27,000. You can guarantee that that is January 6th related. Now go to our next slide here for the content request under FISA. This is not the to and the from. This is the actual meat and potatoes from these Gmail messages, documents, photos, videos, everything, the content inside all of these emails and whatever they're requesting. So it's not just the who, now it's the what. Notice the same thing I did here under Trump. It's red, and they were up to 80,000 requests during that time frame, and immediately jumped by 10,000 in the first month that Biden was in office. And as you can see now, the highest month excuse me, under Trump was 80,000, and we're up to 115,000 requests right now under the Biden administration. And when you have to go to the next step, which is the national security letter, this is almost guaranteed right off the bat. Using a NSL, the FBI can seek the name, address, length of service, and local and long distance toll billing records of a subscriber to a wire or electronic communication service. The FBI can't use NSLs to obtain anything from Google, such as Gmail content, search queries, YouTube videos, or user IP address, but they can under that FISA request. So they can get everything they need through these types of requests. And again, as you can see, during Trump's administration, there was upwards to 1,500 to 2,000 of those requested a month at the highest. And immediately once Biden got into office, that jumped by about 1,000 of them during that time frame. They actually list the national security letters here in Google, but it's nothing fancy. It's basic stuff. I mean, it's a form letter that comes from the FBI, goes to Google, and every single letter, the wording is identical except for the email address and the period of time that they're looking for the data from this person. So again, no meat and potatoes in these letters. So folks, I want to point one thing out, that remember, your phone is always, depending on what your settings are, and most people have settings out there. Some people don't even know what their settings are set at. But your phone is always sending, receiving data. The reason why is because you know how when you get on there, sometimes you've got new emails. That's because your phone is constantly pinging and asking, is there a new email for Paul out there? So it's, right now my phone is bouncing off of a tower. So it's creating that geo information. It's creating an electronic footprint of where I've been, what I'm doing, physically where I've been also. It's gathering all that information, whether we're on it or not, whether I'm sending an email out or I'm just sitting here listening to music or my phone is not doing anything. Now you might be asking yourself, why does any of this matter? I mean, this sounds really interesting. It sounds kind of covert. You know, it's got a James Bond feel to it. What does it matter to us? I'll tell you why it matters. You'll remember the very recent change by the ATF to say who is an unlicensed dealer for firearms. A felony. You can be sent to prison, or you can be sent to a grave like Brian Malinowski in Little Rock if you're an unlicensed dealer. You may be thinking, well, I'm not doing what Malinowski did. I didn't sell 150 guns. Did you sell one? Because they just changed that description, and they are now looking at any of us who are selling guns for profit. The reason why all this matters with this story and all this information I just put out is because the federal government has shown and continues to show that they are routinely making requests for all this information out there. The federal government has made it a point, more specifically the FBI, to make those of us who are white, Christian, gun owners, patriotic Americans, constitutionalists, if you fall in any of those categories, and there's a plethora more of them, you are considered a domestic terrorist. The federal government has made that very, very clear. The White House has made that very, very clear. So they feel like they are justified in gathering information on us. And guess where we're at right now? We're right in the middle of an election season. You don't think things are going to spike and get worse? You don't think they're scared to death of Trump getting back into the White House? And I'm talking about this same FBI, when Trump was in office, was doing the same stuff. It doesn't matter. I mean, obviously the political party can push the limits a little more. We saw this spike whenever Biden went in there, but they were already collecting all that data under Trump. They just increased it. So the Biden administration said, that's not enough. Let's do more. So now we're rolling into an election season, and there is a candidate that is not capable of winning this election in Joe Biden. He is not physically available. He is not mentally available. He is not capable of doing anything that it takes or that's necessary to win an election.
4 more years. Pause.
They are going to do everything they can to harass you and I out there. And I'm not talking about just gun owners. I'm talking about people who go to church on Sunday. I'm talking about people who might go to a Trump rally. I'm talking about people who might go protest about a trans law at the state level being implemented or talked about and trying to be put in place to let men beat the crap out of women in college sports. It could be any of those things. These are all things that the White House, the current White House, has wrapped themselves into, and they will go down in flames fighting these fights. So if you oppose any of these crazy, wacky, nutbag things that they are into, you are going to get thrown in that category. Guess what this means? Let me give you one example. Go to a gun show often? I went to one last weekend here in Lake Charles. Gator Guns put it on. I also went to another function that DTS Tactical and the Gun Cave put on. Both had lots of Second Amendment supporters, good patriotic Americans there. If you go to these shows, remember, they have recently updated the rules, the ATF has, on what is an unlicensed dealer. These people that go to these shows and take advantage of the, quote, gun show loophole, which, by the way, there is no such thing. The gun show loophole is simply private sales without having to fill out a 4473. That's all it is. There's no gun show loophole, right? It's just people just happen to be going to a gun show and they have private sales there, right? But if I go there and I am carrying, I don't know, a Smith & Wesson 357, people will stop you. Hey, is that for sale? You show it to them. If you want to sell it to them, you assume they're not a prohibited person, then you can either do a bill of sale if you want to or not. It's not necessary. And then you can do that private sale. That was before the ATF changed their ruling. Now, the ATF and, let's remember, all government agencies have access to this type of information through Google if they ask for it. The IRS. So now we have the ATF who is looking to put us in jail. If you sell 1 gun, 10 guns, 150 guns, not 150, you probably get a bullet in the head. But if you do any of this and you push the limits of the ATF's new ruling, not only are you going to have the ATF on your case trying to put you in jail and fine you and probably break you through the court system and every other means possible, all they have to do is do one of these geofencing warrants that we just talked about on the exact Saturday and Sunday of that gun show in that particular place, and everybody that fell within that geofence, they could request that data and they could very easily cross-reference that with any of your information out there, whether it's banking records, whether it's Facebook posts, anything like that. And again, remember, with the AI and the bots and everything else that they have out there, if you're posting pictures of your guns and you don't really want that out there, if you're posting something that you bought, there's a very strong possibility they cross-reference all this stuff, find out, come to your door, knock on the door, not with a warrant, just knock on the door. Hey, were you at a gun show a couple weeks ago? Did you buy anything? Oh, did you sell anything? Well, my friends at the IRS want to know too, so if you can give me all that information, and a lot of people get intimidated and bullied very easily, and they will cough that information up to these feds when they come with no warrant whatsoever. This kind of stuff is super scary to me, guys, because there's so much electronically that they can write programs for it to cross-reference it itself. It's not like some guy's in a room scrolling through spreadsheets, cross-referencing things on his own manually. They're creating databases and probably have programs that they just plug a tiny bit of information in, and they're going to get red flags that pop up all over this report that show you how all these things coincide with one another. We warn all the time about the danger of posting things online. This is very scary because now that it's come out through this Forbes article that these people are doing this, and now they're putting videos out there and trying to float these videos and potentially increasing the algorithm and the traffic on some of these videos to push them up into one of the suggested categories. That's scary stuff right there, because it's very easy for them to do the types of things like this and to have unsuspecting users of Google and YouTube out there just taking part in it. And for all we know, we all might be in some database right now for watching one of my videos or somebody else's video out there. They may be researching all of us right now as a result of that. What if we watched a video on M1 Garands and then we went to a gun show? There's your cross-reference right there. And if we ever showed pictures that we have some, be very careful of the information you share out there, guys. I would suggest, if you know how, or you can, or you know someone that can, take a look at your settings on your phone. Location settings, if you're not using the mapping software for something, turn it off, because it's mapping you. And if you don't need all these other settings, these push notifications, all that kind of stuff, turn those off too. Because the best way to do it is to get your phone to stop communicating, and I don't think that's too possible. So the other way is to limit the amount of information that comes in and goes out, and only use it whenever you want that information to come in or go out. Scary times, guys. I say this, and I spend a lot of time on this story because I really want to caution people right now. We listen to the rhetoric on the news. We listen to people right now talking about Biden, about Trump, and whoever else regarding the election. This is going to be an election cycle like we've never seen before. The leftists are this close to losing their power. They saw what happened last time. They saw how Trump, and I don't care what your feelings are about Trump, they're watching right now the black community, the Hispanic community, minority community in general, poor people. They're looking at a group of people who have been slaves of the Democrat Party for a very long time. And slaves of politicians in general, but the Democratic Party have really honed their skills on that. They have kept these people in shackles for so long. And now these people are starting to question this federal government. They're starting to question the Democrat Party. And they're starting to say, I don't think my best interest is in your hands or in your mind. I don't think you are thinking about what's best for me or any of the American people for that matter. As bad as they have tried to divide Americans, they are pushing Americans into one big corner right now. And I feel like they see that. They're not stupid. And I think they're going to do ultimately whatever they can to win this next election. And if it means stripping your right to vote, think about this. Oh, we'll let you plea down. We won't put you in prison, but that felony is going to stay on your record. Now you can't buy guns. Now you can't vote. Think about some of these things going forward. I mentioned the earlier part, the intro to the video about wearing your tinfoil hat. Call me what you want. But I have watched and watched over the years, over the months even, as things change and come to light. And this Forbes story may seem like nothing, but when you read it and realize the lengths that the federal government is trying to go and push private entities like Google to give them information they have no reason for, and to make an entire group of 30,000 people in that one case on that video suspects that they start to eliminate. In other words, they don't start putting suspects into a bucket. They get a bucket of 30,000 and then they start weeding them out and culling them. Something's wrong with that system. That's not how the justice system is supposed to work.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
He's so horrible.